Hello, everyone, and welcome to our fifth LinkedIn Live session on the initial SuccessFactors release update of 2020. I'm Craig Powers, Managing Editor at Rizing. Last week, we talked about money with comp and variable pay. Now we'll get you educated with the latest Learning LMS release. So if you're joining us again, you know how it works. Grab a drink, something strong if you like. No judgment from me. For my part, I've combed my hair, which is such a rare occurrence that my daughter has started calling me Fancy Dada every Wednesday. So a reminder, if you missed our previous episodes, you can find that on our Rizing HCM LinkedIn page. But before we get started, I want to make sure you can hear me. Shoot me a thumbs up in the chat to let me know. Looks good. All right. Also, a disclaimer before we get started with the sheer number of us working from home. If our stream drops, bear with us as I get it back up. All right, let's jump in with our experts. First, I have Chris Fellebaum, our principal consultant for LMS and managed services. Chris, how are you recovering from your beard accident last week?
Hey, Craig, I'm doing well. You know, I've been making a lot of bread, so I got it caught in the bread maker, unfortunately.
Yeah, that probably had to throw that bread out, I imagine.
Oh, no.
Special bread, all right. All right, and also along with Chris, I have Carrie Ross, our senior consultant at LMS and Managed Services. I'm loving the jacket today, Carrie.
Thank you, Craig.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to make you jealous or anything, but I did get to get a haircut last night.
Oh, I'm very jealous. It's getting harder and harder to comb it this way every week.
I was in that situation on a usual 4-week schedule, and I was at about 15. So.
Oh yeah. So I'm usually I'm about 3 weeks, I think, beyond. But yeah, but I'm gonna go ahead and let you guys get started and dive in with the latest learning stuff.
All right, Carrie, your 6-year-old niece did a really good job. So
yeah, she does a very good job.
Looking good. All right, so and I can't get used to this. The 2005 release. It seems like we're stepping back in time, but that's the 2005 release is here, or the H1 2020 release. That's even stranger to get used to, right? After 10 years in this job with quarterly releases, and now they throw us that curveball. So I guess it's better than the H2 or the H3. Well, there is no H3. But this, as you well know, this is a significant LMS release. And it's refreshing, isn't it, after such relatively light LMS releases for the last over a year, I think. But of course,
there hasn't been much.
Because all of the LMS elves were busy in their workshop with the new admin UI, putting that together. So, I think that's definitely the star of the show, this release, the new flash-free learning administration interface.
Yeah, the fact that it's flash-free, that's caused a lot of questions about what that means or how much is changing because of that.
Right.
What does that mean, Chris?
Well, Flash is going the way of the Dodo and is being retired this December. So I'm not sure if we have a specific date from Adobe yet, but it's going away. So the SuccessFactors is rolling out the new learning administration interface, which is, of course, flash-free. That's the whole point of it, in 2 releases. The full version is available in the H1 release, and it gives customers the ability to play around with it side by side with the existing or soon-to-be legacy UI for about 5 more months until the November or H2 release comes, when the current UI will be completely sunsetted. It will be a thing of the past.
That's really nice to have both of them side by side, so you can kind of get used to it, take it on that little bit of a test drive, and not have to just immediately learn where everything is. You can kind of do it in tandem.
Agreed. we've both been talking with a lot of customers about this in the past month or so. And understandably, some customers are a little anxious about the change management or learning curve involved, particularly those with an extended admin population. Some of our customers have something like 75 LMS administrators spread throughout the world. And, I try to put it in perspective for them that it's really not that much of a learning curve. I've been playing around with it a lot, obviously, and I'll tell you what, I think it's very clear that SuccessFactors had a lot of discussion around what this should look like, and they put a lot of planning into it because it is so intuitive. I just don't see a lot of a learning curve at all. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that some of the people that I've talked to are very nervous about it at first, but when you get in there and look at it, look at the screenshots that have been provided, or even go and look in the test system now, and it just makes a lot more sense the way some of it's laid out, very intuitive, some of the terminology that I know we're going to kind of talk about a bit, but it all just is not as, it's not scary like a lot of people think it might be at first.
Right. And I mean, let's face it, the current / soon to be legacy UI, I'm not sure what to call it yet, is it's a little dated. I've been working with SuccessFactors Learning almost 10 years this year, and it really hasn't changed much in that whole time, right? Some of the newer Flash-free entities like programs or assessments obviously were developed in HTML5 and have a little bit of a different look and feel. But really, the UI has been the same since 6.4 and even before that, for the most part.
I think probably the scariest part, or that you've mentioned, Chris, is the picture on that main page. You say kind of reminds you of the circus, and you're afraid of clowns. I don't understand why people are afraid of clowns.
All right, I'm out of here. That is absolutely terrifying. I don't know if that was technology or just confusion for being quarantined for so long, but I saw a clown.
I don't know. Our manager might have had a hand in helping me with that.
Well, we'll talk with him about it later. In all seriousness, the only thing I don't like about it, and we've had this conversation, is that kind of carnival image on the new UI homepage. And the good news is that is pretty easily replaced. So, and it's a good opportunity to help with change management and communication as well. So by creating a new landing page and setting it as the global default, of course, you can put pretty much whatever you want there. You might have to dust off your HTML skills a little bit, but yeah, let's keep the clowns behind the scenes.
Okay.
One thing I was really glad to see in obviously anticipating this new UI for a long time and finally getting to test drive it is they didn't just do a lift and shift, right? They could have kind of taken everything from the old box and just put it into a new shape box, but they really went quite far beyond that. And again, I see so much evidence of a lot of planning, a lot of deliberate discussion on their part. They being, program management and product management for LMS at SAP SuccessFactors. But, you mentioned terminology changes. A lot of the terms were either dated or, kind of LMS geek speak to begin with. Some of them were just never clear, and it was kind of mysterious how they ever came about. Others have become confusing in the context of the bigger picture, the integrated HXM suite. Sorry, I still want to say BizX. That's kind of made some of the terms almost contradictory to other terms. So they took advantage, certainly, to refresh the terminology in many cases. And we'll talk about some specific examples there. but also to really reimagine the priority of the navigation. Certain things that were very hard to find before. I always use the example of editing a notification template at either the item or scheduled offering level. It's almost like somebody took the bet to make that as deliberately hard to find as possible in the current UI. That
Agree.
related, nobody's going to miss the related more menu. So
No. Yeah, I mean, just making so much of it more streamlined and much easier to find. So much of that stuff.
and hopefully, so a number of our customers and audience today have had the chance to play around with it, because obviously it's been in the preview or staging LMS instance for some time now, several weeks. Unless, of course, you're one of those customers who has staging integrated with a production instance of platform. That's a known issue with a mismatch in the code, where you really have not been able to meaningfully test it or even get to staging in some cases. But those customers obviously need only wait until June 5th. And well, hopefully they won't be up past midnight on June 5th playing around with it, but maybe on the 6th.
Or maybe they'll wait until that Monday.
They might. Some people I know will probably be up late that night. But
Agree.
So one thing that I've seen a little bit of angst about, with all the changes, and particularly I saw a lot of churn, I guess, about this during the customer release webinar for the H1 LMS release, is the changes to the online content structure, and not the structural changes so much, but the change to some of the rules of the road of what you can and can't do moving forward to modify the online content structure. So as you know, in the new UI, once an item is already in flight, meaning at least one person has completed it, there are certain things that will force a formal revision of that item that did not in the past, such as adding a new content object to the item. And,
Right. Which makes sense. I mean, compliance-wise, as
yeah,
we go into what that change is, it's for a lot of companies, you can't change that and not have that documented in some way for
very
reporting
true.
to the federal government.
Very true. But for those customers, who are not in the pharmaceutical industry or aerospace or one of those highly regulated, scrutinized industries, they probably have never even touched that revision tool, or nor
Right.
had any real reason to create a formal version 2.0 of an item. It's not a big deal though, and I've talked a few customers off the cliff with that already. Um, I think customers just need to be aware of the downstream impact of initiating a formal revision, particularly if that item appears in one or more curricula, because you can kind of awake a sleeping curriculum that way if somebody's already in a complete status. But um, we're certainly here to help our customers navigate that challenge and to give them guidance on that.
Well, and I think with a lot of the people that we've worked with, and that kind of scares, just hearing that you can't change or add the content to it, or change the order of them or
Mhm.
that. But you can still, and we see lots of people do this, if you already have the content object there and you're just literally replacing the content, you can still do that.
Right.
You're
Right.
fine with doing that. So I think that that's probably what a lot of people do, and just hearing you can't change it automatically makes you think that you can't continue to do that, but you still can.
Agreed. And a lot of customers never even touch that related online content area of items. For many customers, their items are either created through a Skillsoft or Open Sesame or LinkedIn Learning integration, or they kind of default to the import content tool. for all their needs, something they've published in Articulate, for example. So I think you're right. It's more perception of hearing that I won't be able to do something moving forward.
Correct.
Other things I've heard a little bit of consternation about. I checked my thesaurus before this call. Are the kind of hiatus that Recents and Bookmarks will be taking. Not really a big deal because they're saying those are going to come back in a patch, as a matter of fact, even before the H2 release. So I'm guessing, late this summer, maybe early September, October timeframe.
Yeah, I know that's been a big thing for people because a lot of times, in my opinion, I feel like you either use Recents and Bookmarks or you don't. There's not a lot of in between. I know I personally am not. I'm not a person that usually has that open. I don't use it a lot because I like the real estate on the screen. But yeah, that has been a big concern. But if it's going to come up with a patch, right now, like you said, for the next 5-6 months, we have both UIs we can go into if needed. So that'll be there.
That is true. I think I'm getting more feedback about the Power Search capability going away. What is that? There's another term for that. Yeah, that was new to me.
The magic bar.
It's something like it's something magical about it. But the search that appears on the Learning Administration homepage, where you can search across keywords for all entities. I can only guess that just could not be moved into the new code because strangely, that does seem to be pretty popular among customers. I've gotten a lot of feedback around that one. So maybe they'll reconsider and, bring that back at some point. I think if I were a practicing day-to-day LMS administrator, one of the things that I would be more impacted by is the ability to filter in place in some of the related entity records or listings, as well as to sort by date. So, for example, within a catalog record, in the related items, it's so handy now to be able to type into that header and kind of filter that list in place. And I don't even know if a lot of customers are aware of that.
Funny you bring that up because I literally just read something this morning of somebody posting on the community and asking about that.
In the validated SaaS group.
That they weren't able to filter or not filter, but sort on that complete date. So I can see where that could be a gap for some users who don't want to go through the effort of running a report to see that and just see it quickly in the UI.
Agreed. Apparently, though, that will be coming back along with the ability to do record configuration at some point on the roadmap. So I kind of reading that as 2021 at this point, but it's nice that they've acknowledged that that's coming back. So why don't we talk about some specific terminology changes? I've kind of created a top maybe 7 list, a la David Letterman, kind of dating myself there. I think that there are a lot of terminology changes, and certainly I think this poses a unique challenge for customers who have, dozens of language packs enabled. And certainly those customers are in the relative minority, but that's a lot to manage. So if you're in that scenario, make sure you're aware of all the resources that SAP SuccessFactors offers to assist with this change. There's a blog page out on the customer community that has a lot of great discussions, a lot of great tools and resources, including a spreadsheet that lists all of the label changes across 43 language packs. So
that's a big deal.
That's a monumental effort.
Definitely
Good grief.
a big deal. I think I have a link to that too that I could put in the chat.
Sweet.
Here in just a bit, I'll find that link. Yeah, that could be definitely helpful.
Sounds good. So some of the key terminology changes that I've seen would be catalog is changing to library. Makes sense, right? I think all of these terminology changes make sense. Catalog to library uh, yeah, it's intuitive. Subject area is changing to category, and that one's kind of been in flux to begin with. It became topic for a while. Now it's going to be category. Scheduled offering, as you know, is becoming class.
This is big. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a pretty big one.
and I think it's a much more intuitive term. I've even
definitely.
I've even implemented 2 customers I can think of who made that label change out of the gate. So they were
Right.
certainly, cutting edge with that. Segment. So, if you're inserting block of time information into an item or editing that within a scheduled offering, that is now a time slot.
Which again makes a lot more sense.
It does.
And understand, yeah, much easier to understand.
And a few that are kind of, again, normalized to make more sense in the context of the overall SuccessFactors suite would include supervisor, which is changing to manager, to kind of normalize with that term in literally every other module.
And in all of SuccessFactors.
Yeah. Workflow is, of course, changing to permission.
I really like that one.
I do too. I mean, how else did we ever explain that in the past except as a permission?
Yeah, I like that one, and just the first time I saw it in the interface, it was just like, that is so much more clear.
And of course, workflow has a much different connotation in platform or EC. And syntax tag, if you're a fan of editing notification templates, I don't know if anyone is, well, we are, is now token. So again, kind of normalizing with the equivalent term in platform.
Right.
So let's see. Some common questions that we're getting from customers. We're in a wonderful position to be able to speak with customers frequently, and some of the questions that we're getting most frequently would include: are there any changes to the user experience? Change management for 2, 3, maybe 30 admins. That's one thing. That's a very contained, population of people. But 20,000 users, that's a very different story. So,
and that's good you bring that. You're starting to talk about that, Chris, because we do have a question from our friend Greg Hamlick.
Hey, Greg.
That we've been working with for a while, and asking, are we going to cover anything beyond Admin Center for Learning? Do we
my
see
neighbor
any
in Greenville, South Carolina?
Yeah, that's right. He's really close to you. And do we see any significant changes there from the user side?
And the good news is, well, I guess it's open to interpretation. Some customers might like to see more changes on the user side. The good news from a change management standpoint is that there's basically none to speak of. The structure of end user navigation, learner navigation is completely unchanged. There are only 3 terminology changes that are end user facing, and we've talked about 2 of those: catalog and subject area. So any references to those will be changed to library or category, respectively. And the third is, and I didn't note it, and I should have it memorized by now, but the filter in the catalog, refined by category, I think is changing to another term, but something also a little more intuitive. And I don't think most end users or learners in the system necessarily latch on to the verbiage of something as much as they do kind of muscle memory of where it lives. So if I were a customer, I probably wouldn't even put any focus or be concerned with end user change management.
Yeah. Oh, I just looked that up, Chris, since it was kind of out there, but the refine by category will be changed to refine by learning type,
That's the
which
one.
makes much more sense. I mean, category being the topic that you want or the subject area, and then that's what is the type of learning. Category being in the past, instructor-led or time-based or, online.
Or curriculum.
Wasn't necessarily as much. So yeah, Greg says thanks. That is what he thought, and that is what he had reviewed. So thank you for.
Although there is a roadmap, sort of there. It's foreshadowed on the roadmap that between, I think, 18 and 24 months out, there is going to be a focus on reimagining the user UI. So definitely keep an eye on that. That kind of intrigues me almost more than the admin UI in a way, right? Because there's a lot of opportunity there.
And Chris, you and I were around for the last time they redid the user UI.
Very true.
So that was a while back, and so definitely there's some additional things that could be done there. Even if
we do go back a ways, don't we? Yeah. We're veterans. So LMS veterans. So we already talked about the Carnival image on the new admin homepage, and I have to be honest, I'm not entirely sure what that's trying to convey. Maybe it's a oh geez. All right, I'm just gonna look elsewhere. But yes, that can be changed. And again, that's done by creating a new introduction panel and setting that as the admin default in global settings. And yeah, I'm very distracted now. Anything to add? Have you created an introduction panel before?
I have not. I have not gone in there and done that yet.
I'm pretty sure it's all HTML based. So
which will be nice.
Yeah, if you have some, I might be dating myself here, but if you have a tool like Dreamweaver, you could kind of build what you want it to look like, and then just switch over to the code and grab that to drop in.
In a lot of places within learning, like with notifications and things like that, and I don't know, you can tell me if this is the way it is for that intro area. You can click and choose source, and you can type it in like the WYSIWYG, and then go over to the source if you need to make any little changes. Is it the same way there, where it's that easy?
I believe so. No, actually, now that I visualize it, I think it's just an open box, almost like the email notification header and footer that you have in organizations. It's pretty much just a text box. Yep.
Yeah.
The only other question that we get a little bit is whether there are, well, we get a lot of questions, but ones that might be of interest. Are there any changes to things like out-of-box notifications or completion certificates? Have any of those been refreshed or updated? And the answer there is definitely no. It wasn't really part of the scope, I think, of this change. Anything that you might consider content will remain the same. And only the UI itself is changing.
All right. We do have a question here, Chris, from Kamal. Not necessarily around the interface itself, but just asking, have we heard, do we know if there's some sort of a bug or anything while removing content from a curriculum in bulk? Have you heard of anything with that? I mean, it might be something that we can.
Yeah, we can look that one up offline. Not directly. I'm not aware of anything offhand, but
I haven't heard of anything either. But that doesn't mean that it's not out there. So
very true. So, well, why don't we move on? I'm looking at the time and talk briefly about some of the other features. They kind of get short shift a little bit with the star of the show here, in the spotlight. But there are some other good features coming out with this release. And interestingly, there are 3 separate ones, a couple that made it very last minute into the release, but 3 separate features around scheduled reports, right?
Big
And
deal.
the one that I think is the biggest deal, certainly, is a new workflow that allows admins, so it's an opt-in feature, but it allows admins with the applicable workflow to edit other admins' scheduled report jobs specifically.
That
And
is huge.
it doesn't sound like it on the surface, right? But you and I both know that.
There are those few customers out there that, I mean, I can think of one very specifically that you have to set up a separate admin because if somebody becomes inactive, and you have to remember that login to be able to go and log in as that user for these scheduled jobs that might be going out to SFTP or anything like that. This will be a major thing for them, which just so easy.
Definitely. Timed exams. So kind of the first evolution of the assessment tool that we've seen in a long time, really. And, I think we'll see probably other enhancements in H2, paving the way, of course, for the retirement of the PQE tool. And, if you still depend on PQE assessments, don't panic necessarily. It's kind of a phased approach to sunsetting that. And I would look out on the customer community for specific details. But
and that's kind of been going on for a while too.
It has.
Yeah.
So timed assessments or exams specifically, the ability to specify a duration. And I think speculating a little bit, I know SuccessFactors has been soliciting customer feedback on how they would like to see proctored exams work. So we might be seeing something, and that's kind of the only remaining gap, are proctored or printable exams. So maybe we'll see more about that in H2.
Definitely, yeah. That's definitely been an evolving tool there with the assessments and quizzes.
You know it. And the other feature, or kind of grouping of features, I guess, is more mobile deep link support for the SuccessFactors mobile app for learning. And that's kind of continuing a trend we've seen for, at least the last 3 releases. They're kind of rolling out new deep link capabilities in waves. And actually, that reminds me of another very late breaking feature, and that is the ability to have a direct link, even independent of mobile, but to have a direct link that always resolves to the latest revision of an item. And that one's, again, it might be a little more industry specific, but that's one that has been a source of frustration in the past, certainly, because a direct link to this point to a revision 1 of an item always went to revision 1,
right?
Which by the time somebody goes there, it might already be superseded or inactivated.
Yeah. Like you mentioned earlier, not everybody uses the revisioning process or the revisions, but for those customers who do, like you said, can be kind of industry specific, but that's going to be a big deal.
Indeed. And, kind of the last thing that we're going to chat about a little bit is the evolving landscape of the native login deprecation. Boy, I sound scholarly there.
That did sound very scholarly. And it makes me, just knowing all the customers that we have questions about this and everything, it makes me go, because it's a big thing that's coming up.
And certainly it's been announced for a long time, and specifically we're referring to the ability for users to not only log in directly to the LMS and not go through the BizX login, but also for users to be native and to only exist in LMS as the source of record, right? where they are not integrated. They do not come from an HRIS as a source of record through platform or from EC if that's the HRIS. And the messaging on this, at least maybe 6 months ago at this point, was very clear that all users would need to be in platform, and you would have to set up an external user in platform integration to have them, although they might be logging in through a site, in the background they would actually be authenticating through platform.
Right.
And as SAP SuccessFactors has softened the message on this a little bit more recently, basically saying, I'm paraphrasing, that if having users only in LMS is working for you, and they qualify that you don't also need them to have access to the mobile app for learning or other SuccessFactors modules or platform features, then you will be able to keep them in LMS alone. And apparently, I know more details forthcoming on this, but this will work through IAS replacing the authentication method via a site login.
Right. So that'll be something for anybody looking into that and how they're going to handle that, is to definitely look into IAS as something that you have to set up pretty much from your side and get that authentication in there. So you'll need a little bit of IT help probably, but at least there's another way.
Absolutely, and we're as always, we have our ears to the ground on that one for any developing news. We have a lot of customers influenced and impacted by that changing messaging. So
definitely we've seen a lot of tickets come through in our area, what we work on with questions around that and assistance in helping to understand that. So that's
right. So I guess I don't see any more questions.
No, I don't see any more questions out there either.
Yeah. You want to talk about sports or something, or should we probably give Craig the signal here?
Are there sports to talk about right now?
I'm the worst person to talk about sports.
We can talk about Brady and Tiger Woods, I suppose, and the golf thing, but I don't know that there's much else out there right now.
Yeah,
we're ready for baseball and ready for it to all come back, hopefully.
Well, everybody keep safe, and it's been a pleasure speaking with you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris and Carrie. I know on the sports side, some of my friends and I have adopted a German Bundesliga soccer team to watch because they're about the only sport that's going right now. That's how desperate I am to watch something. But yeah, you guys did such a great job. I think we're going to have you run all of our in-house learning sessions at Rizing now. So congratulations. I was so impressed. But yeah, thank you so much, Chris and Carrie. You answered all those questions greatly, and I really enjoyed the clown face, even though Chris, you obviously did not. I'm looking forward to checking out that UI and seeing the carnival later. But yeah, that's all we've got for you guys on learning. Thank you for joining us on this live stream. We have more to come for the SuccessFactors H1 2020 release. Next Wednesday will be our final one on Employee Central and Employee Central Payroll. Again, that will be at 11 Eastern. Remember to check back on our LinkedIn page for all the previous editions where we covered a lot of other modules. Oh, we have a comment from Mandy. Thank you, Chris and Carrie. Good, Carrie. Good to see your face. That's always nice to hear.
It's been a while.
Great. And if you have any other questions, again, you can drop them in the chat. We'll try to cover them. Thank you for watching, Greg. We see that. And then you can reach out to us if you have questions on learning, or if you need help managing release updates, reach out to our team at hcm@rising.com. I know we're getting pretty close to the release, and this was a pretty big one. So if you need any help, feel free to reach out to us. Again, next week we'll be back to cover Employee Central. I'm going to shout out our webinar again that we have coming up. As we hopefully get back to work, HR will be tasked with managing employee wellness and risk. And at Rizing, we have added functionality to our Lyra data analytics tool to bring together some of that important COVID-19 related information, including geographic information. So on June 4th, regarding that, we'll have our webcast on integrating HCM and COVID-19 data to manage risk, business continuity, and employee wellness. That'll be at 1 p.m. Eastern. We'll drop a link to register for that in the chat here. And there we'll actually have customers to talk about using our tool on that, so it'll be pretty cool. So again, thank you for joining Chris, Carrie, and myself. And I'll be back next Wednesday with some more people to talk about Employee Central right here on LinkedIn.
Thanks, Craig.
Thank you.